I just wanted to say good morning, Sawadee Ka, and welcome to the second Corporate Sustainability and Environmental Rights in Asia Conference. My name is Belinda Shajayo, but you can call me Belinda. And I have the honor of welcoming you all here today. Now, I won't take too much of your time, but I will say this. Over the last few weeks, months of hard work with different partners, with all of you, communicating with all of you, whether it's through communications or directly via email, etc., a saying kept coming to my head from back home. Umuntu ngabantu. A person is a person because of the community that they are part of. Now, we have a special community here at the CSERA conference, one that is comprised of business leaders, regulators, civil society, environmental experts, and in these uncertain times, it is really an honor and a pleasure to see all of us come together to talk about stakeholder engagement. How do we better communicate with businesses about the triple planetary crisis, emerging human rights concerns, etc. Now, I know that you're not here to hear me speak, but rather our esteemed panelists and guests. So I would like to hand over to Mr. Gerd Trogman, Manager Regional Program and Global Policy Network, Bangkok Regional Hub. Over to you, Gerd.
Thank you very much, Belinda, and a very good morning to you all across this very nice and actually quite cozy conference room. Very good to see you. Thank you for making time. It's a privilege for me to welcome you all on behalf of UNDP to the second Corporate Sustainability and Environmental Rights in Asia conference, in short CSERA, this time under the theme and title Beyond Disclosures, Charting Asia's Corporate Stakeholder Engagement Ecosystem. Allow me to start with a word of gratitude to the European Union for making this conference possible, and with a word of thanks and appreciation to our organizing partners, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, for their support and for their collaboration. The year 2025 marks the third anniversary of the UN General Assembly's recognition of the right to a clean, to a healthy, and a sustainable environment. In these 3 years, we have seen shifts in the way countries, businesses, and people view, assess, and respond to human rights and environmental degradation. Recent global agreements, take the COP16 on biodiversity or COP29 on climate change, underscore the deep connection between human rights and climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. For business and industry in the region, we have seen positive movements towards corporate responsibility and accountability, demonstrating commitment to people and planet. For governments in the region, we have seen the growing centrality of the link between economic growth as well as human and environmental rights. The links between rapid industrial development, environmental impacts, and human rights are evident across the region. Asia is the global growth engine of the world, contributing almost 47% of global GDP. But Asia also faces over 50% of global climate-related disasters, including typhoons and cyclones, heat waves, and rising sea levels. 83 of the world's 100 most polluted cities are in Asia. The ASEAN region alone has lost 30% of its forests in the past 40 years, threatening ecosystems, agriculture, and livelihoods. Yet we have also seen that responsible businesses drive meaningful change for the people in the region. adopting human rights-based approaches to environmental challenges. We see three very important trends in this respect that I believe are worth highlighting tonight. First, stronger due diligence. Due diligence is no longer just about risk mitigation. It's about value creation. Companies that integrate environmental and human rights due diligence into their core business strategy thrive in the long term. Secondly, stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement is much more than an obligation, it's an opportunity. Businesses that engage with civil society, environmental defenders, and frontline communities will be more adaptive, more resilient, and more impactful. Thirdly, regulatory evolution. Businesses that anticipate and align with emerging regulations will lead. Regulatory compliance is not just about avoiding penalties. It's about future-proofing business model and driving policy innovation. I trust that important trends like these will feature strongly in your discussions over the next 2 days. CSERA is a space for dialogue. It's a space for learning, a space for collaboration. And on behalf of the organizing team, I encourage you all to challenge your ideas, to share new perspectives, and explore solutions together over the next 2 days. Thank you for joining the second Corporate Sustainability and Environmental Rights in Asia conference, and welcome again to all of you. Thank you.
There we go. Third time's a try. Thank you, Gerd, for those lovely welcome remarks. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Andreas Rothger. Apologies if I mispronounced your surname. First Counselor, Head of Regional Team Asia and Pacific Services Foreign Policy Instruments at the European Union Commission. Over to you.
Gerd Strogemann, UNDP, Dr. Pornanong Butsaran Dragon, Secretary General of the Security and Exchange Commission, representatives from business, regulators, civil society, and youth. Sawadee-ka. It is a great pleasure and honor to be able to be here to also welcome you on behalf of the European Union to this important conference, Corporate Sustainability and Environmental Rights in Asia. I would like, firstly, to congratulate and thank all involved agencies in pulling this off, UNDP, UNICEF, UNEP, IUCN, and the UN Global Compact Network Thailand, for organizing this important event and for inviting us to participate and to allow us to share our views. I'm honored to be given the opportunity to take the floor right now on what is a very important topic, corporate stakeholder engagement. These days, with all what happens across the globe, we sometimes are tempted to forget. But there is, and it was mentioned before, this triple crisis we shouldn't forget of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, which is remaining one of the defining global and existential threats we face. It must be addressed in a comprehensive and integrated way through enhanced multilateralism and global action in a stakeholder and consultative process. What is needed is resilience. What is needed is, nevertheless, optimism. To drive us, what is needed is passion and humility. The EU is committed to environmental protection. It is enshrined in our Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. The EU's commitment to address risks to climate, environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, and water scarcity are also including the dimension of what does it mean to human rights, the right to live, the right of a healthy life, safe drinking water, sanitation, food, adequate housing, good standard or decent standard at least of living for all, and so on. The EU supports the implementation of environmental rules, multilateral agreements, and we do this also through our trade policy, and this is the link also of today's conference. We welcome the recognition by the UN Human Rights Council and the UN General Assembly of a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right. The EU supports the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights impact on climate change and on the human rights obligations relating to the environment. We continue to assist and promote the work of human rights defenders worldwide. We are furthermore strongly engaged in advancing business practices that are respecting and promoting human rights in line with UN guiding principles on business and human rights. Building on earlier policies on corporate social responsibility, the EU has in the past years advocated towards mandatory legal requirements on business and human rights based on agreed international standards. Several recently adopted pieces of legislation in the EU, such as the Critical Raw Materials Act, the Digital Service Act, or the Artificial Intelligence Act, include due diligence requirements as a tool for companies to address potential negative impacts on human rights. The recent entry into force of the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, or CS3D, marks a significant step forward in our efforts to provide a framework for due diligence in the value chain. This directive builds not only on the work done by the UN in the framework of the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, but also on the OECD's framework of responsible business conduct and the ILO's work on decent work. All these provide conceptual foundations for us in the EU and partners to approach the corporate sustainability and the rationale as to why due diligence should be at the core of it. It seeks to ensure that companies take responsibilities for their impact on human rights and the environment. It establishes a comprehensive framework, and it requires to work together in a stakeholder approach to identify, prevent, and mitigate adverse impacts on human rights and the environment throughout the operations and value chains. Importantly, while this is challenging, we should embrace that challenge and take it as an opportunity for present generations and also for future generations, and also as a way which can drive growth, even if at the beginning it is slightly more challenging. We believe that by adopting robust due diligence practices, business can position themselves to secure long-term market advantage, enhance supply chain resilience, and attract more sustainable investment as global demand for ethical business practices is certainly growing. Continued efforts are needed. And while aiming to help achieve a fair digital and green transition, I would also like to stress that we in the European Union are always ready and listen carefully to our partners around the world on their feedback on the implications and impact of, for instance, our regulations, to draw lessons and act quickly to ensure that responsible companies worldwide can continue investing in driving forward necessary changes. As we acknowledge Asia's fundamentally critical role in global supply chains, and it was mentioned already, this is a center of gravity of the world in many respects, We are committed to continue working closely with our partners in the region on policy reforms and on strengthening institutional capacity, with the aim to create a regulatory environment that holds accountability dear and also puts the human beings at the center of all our undertakings. Now, being here in Thailand and Bangkok, I am happy to inform that the EU delegation continues to closely cooperate with the Ministry of Justice on its intent to develop a corporate sustainability law for Thailand. Civil society organizations, and many of you are representing them here in the room, are indispensable, I would say, in our joint efforts, particularly in advocating for those affected by corporate action and holding business accountable for their action. Hence, particular attention is needed to ensure an enabling environment for civil society and rights holders to speak out and to make their voice heard in the joint undertaking. We continue to work with our key partners, many of you are here today, to operationalize plans and commitments through targeted projects. Right now, from the FBI services, we are working with 3 projects in this domain. One is called Agent for Change, Youth and Media Responsible Business Practice, where we have joined hands with UNDP. Another one is with the OECD, where we work on responsible business conduct for green and digital and resilient supply chains in Asia. And finally, we have just started work with ILO on managing a decent future of work together in the Asia Pacific, which is focusing on the mega trends which are affecting today's work environment. So these are all 3 important actions which show that we are firmly committed to this topic. I would now like to really stop, I was already far too long, by hoping you will have a very inspiring deliberation which will allow you to make your voice in the context of this corporate sustainable due diligence discussions heard, inform, provide some tangible action points so that indeed we continue
His Excellency. Are you there in the Zoom meeting room?
One of the most pressing challenges of our time, the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable development. The triple planetary crisis, which is the linkage of the 3 main issues: climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, that affects our fundamental human rights. Climate change threatens lives through extreme weather. Biodiversity loss undermines human health and livelihoods. Pollution also increases health risks and has a more severe impact on those already ill. These crises form a vicious cycle. Pollution drives climate change. Climate change escalate biodiversity losses, and biodiversity loss worsen pollution, and global warming. Let me elaborate a clear picture of the severity of the triple planetary crisis for human rights. Regarding air pollution, PM 2.5 accounted for 8.1 million deaths globally in 2021, becoming the second leading risk factor for death, including for children under 5 years old. Biodiversity loss underpin many of the fundamental conditions necessary for the human rights, particularly the right to life, health, water, food, cultures, and a healthy environment. In addition, according to the UNDP, climate change is projected to push up to 132 million people into extreme poverty by 2030. Among these, 44 million individuals will face extreme poverty primarily due to climate-induced health crisis. As climate change intensifies its negative effect on income, livelihoods, displacement, and overall well-being will become increasingly evident. What does the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, as a regulator of the Thai capital market can do? The Thai capital market plays a crucial role in channeling funds toward environmentally and socially conscious business. The SEC is therefore committed to enhancing the ecosystem to make this mechanism work effectively. This is one of the main goals in the Capital Market Development Plan and also our strategic plan too. The SEC encourages ESG disclosure through the One Report system implemented in 2022, which requires all listed companies to follow a comply or explain mechanism for sustainability reporting. And we are in the process of strengthening this framework by aligning it with the ISSB standards, which the International Organization of Securities Commission or IOSCO endorses as a global baseline. This will guide the Thai capital markets sustainability disclosure into a more robust and internationally harmonized reporting environment. In addition to climate-related information, the One Report framework encourages businesses to establish human rights policies, as well as the implement and disclose human rights due diligence, HRDD, that you mentioned. The HRDD is strongly encouraged because its concept is integral to international standards, like the United Nations Guiding Principles on the Business and Human Rights and the OECD Guidelines for the Multinational Enterprise. The core objectives is to help businesses to identify, prevent, and mitigate adverse impacts. Unlike to those impacts can link to their operations, supply chains, and business relationships. These HRDD processes are critical because they not only assess potential impacts on human rights on the social context, but also consider the environmental implication. Currently, 96% of listed companies in Thailand have already disclosed human rights policies, which is a good starting point. Within this group, among 14% implemented the human rights due diligence HRDD. Although doubling from the previous year, this still indicates substantial room for improvement and the need for commitment and engagement from all stakeholders.
Excellency Ishwana, are you there? Excellency Ishwana, are you there? Should I please kindly drop on test your microphone, please? Speaking from Bangkok, Thailand. Excellency, Ishwana, are you in the room? Thank you. Excellency, Ishwana, could you kindly answer and test your microphone, please?
I can hear you. Hello?
Oh, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I can't hear the speaker.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have your session will start very soon shortly. Thank you for joining us, Excellencies, and welcome to the conference, greeting from Bangkok, Thailand.
Thank you.
We will project you to the conference room shortly after your session start, and then you can join other panelists in person here in Bangkok.
Should I keep my camera on?
Yes, please. Could you absolutely? Thank you, Excellency.
Involved in shares of listed companies that meet certain criteria demonstrating their good ESG practices. These include the companies with outstanding ESG rating or score, as evaluated by reliable and independent institutions, or the companies with corporate governance excellence and disclosure of corporate value-up plan, including ESG initiatives or greenhouse gas emission reduction plans via the Stock Exchange of Thailand's platform. In summary, what the SEC has been doing, and we plan to continue to do it, demonstrate an effort to build a holistic ecosystem, which requires simultaneous implementation across different areas. However, the SEC is not doing this alone. It is, in fact, the collective effort and unity of everyone in the capital market with strong determination, clear policy and direction, and actionable implementation plans. I believe these are our key success factors. I would like to add that these events reflects the same vision of bringing together people who share common goal. Therefore, these today's events will provide an invaluable platform for us to learn, connect, and act for a meaningful change. Now it is up to us to turn insights into actions by integrating human rights into corporate strategies, strengthening sustainability efforts, and shaping a more responsible business landscape. Let's take this momentum beyond these walls and create a future where business, environment, and human rights can go hands in hands. Thank you so much. สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you so much, Dr. Palanon, for those inspiring words and also drawing from, I think, the key pillars of this conference: learn, connect, and act. Now, without much further ado, I would like to firstly thank once again Andres Kunpanonong and of course Gerd for the opening and officially opening the Corporate Sustainability and Environmental Rights in Asia conference. Just one more round of applause, please. I know it's pretty early in the day, but that was lovely, and we sincerely do appreciate the warm welcome and a lot of food for thought. Just a few housekeeping items before we move on to the next segment. You will see our live scribe. Her name is Iris. She is capturing what we hope will be the outcomes of this conference and our discussions. What does stakeholder engagement look like? So when we talk about community, we really want to make sure that we get your voices heard as well, and we chart out and map out what stakeholder engagement looks like during the conference. So thank you, Iris. And feel free to always approach her. Now, without much further ado, I would like to go to the second part of our opening segment, which is our plenary discussion on the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, redefining corporate engagement. Now, we do have a special guest of honor who has offered better than I to kind of frame what we mean by redefining corporate engagement. And I believe she's online. Hi, there we go. I would like to introduce Her Excellency Rizwana Syeda Hassan, Advisor to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of the Government of Bangladesh. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want me to start?
Yes, over to you.
Thank you. When I think about people's right to clean and healthy environment and try to reimagine the role of the corporations, I see that it is not only the corporations or the government who can promote and defend people's right to clean and healthy environment. I think it is broadly four set of actors. One is the government. The other is, of course, the business and the corporations. The third is the civil society. And fourth is the communities. So even though we are talking about corporate engagement, I think all the four actors have a defined role to play to ensure that the corporate engagement is respectful to nature and is respectful to people's right to clean and healthy environment. I think it's very important that the government or a country has the right set of law. I don't think that many states in the world have actually defined right to environment as a right in their constitution. Yes, the right has been included through judicial interpretation, but some countries have expressly given legal recognition to right to environment, while others are yet to give that recognition and tend to interpret right to life broadly to include right to environment. I think that should change, and we should recognize right to environment in respective constitution. Having said that, I should also say that only recognizing clean environment as a right of the people may not lead us to a world where we'll actually be respectful to nature. Because if we take a too much of anthropocentric approach, then the rights of other species on the earth might get a little undermined. So we need to also talk about protection of biodiversity and protection of other flora and fauna on this earth. The legal regime in order for us to ensure corporate engagement and subject them to certain standards and legal procedure, it's important to ensure that our laws recognize certain principles. For example, the principle of sustainable development, both with its qualitative and quantitative aspect, the principle of precaution, the polluter pays principle, and I must add, the principle of due diligence. We often see that in the corporate world, when we, the developing countries, are the exporters and we export to Western world, they come with heavily loaded responsibilities for the corporations. For example, in the garment sector in Bangladesh, we often see the buyers asking for this condition today, that condition tomorrow. When it comes to the Western countries, developed countries, exporting to our part of the world, the standards certainly go down. For example, the shipbreaking industry, it is being transferred from the developed country to the developing countries without adhering to the same set of principles to which they adhere to when they themselves become importers. So I think the double standard has to really go. In terms of air pollution also, we have seen that in our part of the world, we set the standards pretty low. But it can't be the case because the lungs of a Western citizen is no different than the lungs of a Bangladeshi citizen. So I think we should be done with double standards when our countries, irrespective of whether our countries are exporters or importers. There is also one thing about business and human rights, as if they are terms that are inherently contradictory, but they should be terms that should be mutually supportive of each other. Many of our countries have CSR principles, but most of our countries do not have CSR as legally binding mechanism. And even the business and human rights thing, although some of our laws talk about, some of our countries talk about all the four principles that I have mentioned, the precautionary principle, polluter pays principle, sustainable development principle, due diligence, most of our countries haven't done that. So I think there is a need for the state governments to think about incorporating this expressly in their legal domain and to ensure that business is subjected to certain legally binding procedures and they cannot violate those. Moving from the principles, I would also like to talk about and emphasize on some practices that we really need to see institutionalized. For example, it's not only the government, the citizens who take keen interest in the quality of their air, in the quality of their environment, in the quality of their forest, in the quality of their soil and water, they should be given access to information. Some of our countries have right to Information Act, but most of our countries do not have right to environmental information law. This is an absolute necessary. In one good practice, we have seen that most of our countries have made the EIA regime public, but the responsibility of those who prepared the EIA document or who can prepare the EIA document so that it does not become a copy-paste legal regime hasn't been guaranteed in the laws of most of the countries. So right to information is of vital importance. Those of our countries who have Right to Information Act, many have exempted the corporate sector from disclosing their vitally important environmental information that would allow people to form a judgment about the environmental sustainability of their business, that would allow the communities to really know what will be done in the name of business around their surrounding. So I see that is also a requirement that our governments will do good in considering. Right to information, participation. Many of our EIA regimes have actually incorporated many progressive elements from different parts of the world, but those are actually not into practice. If you don't share information on the ground of state security, you can't expect people to form the right opinion. So people should be allowed to participate in the decision-making process and not really be given a role that will be reactive in nature. Communities should be engaged, and that is what we have started to practice in Bangladesh. And the third element is access to justice. I think it's very important that when communities feel that their rights are not being protected because of corporate abuse, misuse, they should be given the right to take their grievances to administrative forum and to the judiciary forum. In some countries, we have seen that the life of the environmental human rights defenders are becoming really difficult. So the state can think of evolving mechanism that would protect the environmental human rights defenders and should not try to regulate their activities under the pretext of regulating the fund flow for regulating terrorism. That should absolutely go. And we know that many countries are coming up with laws that will regulate the functioning of NGOs and subject the NGOs to stricter government regulation. That is something I think should be rethought. The whole regime of EIA and SIA, fortunately, is being more open and is allowing people to participate, to really know about what's happening in the name of corporate inclusion in development schemes. But I think there is absolute necessity of translating the EIAs, or at the first place doing the EIA in the local language so that people understand them better. Bangladesh has a separate environmental code. It's not very encouraging. It's not functioning properly, but there are other countries in the world who are having separate environmental code with defined responsibilities, wider responsibilities with defined principles that they'll defend. I think all countries around the world can go through the successful models of environmental legal adjudication and can upgrade their environmental tribunals. In Bangladesh, we have got very strong culture of community engagement and suing the corporations for violating environmental law. Side by side, we are also seeing that the corporations are coming out with corporate social responsibility and helping many social causes. So I think if corporate social responsibility could be made binding, then the corporations would not first be doing the damage and then doing the rectification. They'll from the very beginning take a precautionary approach. We have compensation principles in our law. In some countries, they realize the compensation, put it in a common fund and use it for eco-restoration. I think that can be a global practice. As for the role of the business, I think their transparency is of absolute necessity, and they should be trying to comply with the system and not manage the system in not a straightforward way. We often see that the corporations go into practices like greening, which is often greenwashing, which is often not authentic certification. The government, communities, and the corporations should work together that the certifications are genuine and not mere greenwashing. We have seen huge improvement taking place in Bangladesh in the ready-made garment sectors. We are yet to see the same improvement take place in other sectors where we export. One way of impacting public mind is through the media. We see that the corporations more and more are having control over the media. They're having their own media houses and often spreading information that are not proper. So this corporate media has become a challenge to people's struggle for right to clean environment. And we should all be careful. The corporations should be publishing, should be making available all vital information through their websites regularly. And the final point that I would like to make, that the businesses should think about insurance, so that if there are accidental damage done to environment, the communities who are impacted are adequately compensated. The civil society, the environmental activists, they must not be sleeping on their rights. They should be always persistent and focused. That has been a case here in Bangladesh, that there is a community that has emerged who are known as environmental activists. They are very vigilant. They keep an eye on what is happening in the business sector and constantly creating pressure on the government, so that the pressure is also conveyed to the corporations to ensure compliance with environmental laws, rules, and standards. Persistence is of utmost importance, and focus is also of utmost importance. It's very important for the government to educate the community. So if environmental rights, environmental obligations are included in the curriculum, which Bangladesh has included, but we see need to include them in with more depth and in with more diversity. So from the very beginning, children will grow up with environmental education that will ensure that the society is environmentally responsible, and that will eventually force the corporate practices to be compliant. And I think whether it's government, whether it's corporations, the motto should be not to destroy the natural resource base, not to do harm to the nature. Because if you can't create a thing, if you can't create a river, if you can't create a forest, if you can't create a mountain, you have no right to damage it. So with these words, I would conclude here. And if there is scope for me to participate in question answer, most happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So over the last, I would say 40 minutes, we have charted a few things about what the corporate stakeholder engagement ecosystem looks like, right? Her Excellency spoke about government, businesses, even media. We heard about regulators, different due diligence standards from different parts of the world, etc. So now I'd like to welcome this esteemed panel to give us some practical reflections on how does this look like? What does stakeholder engagement look like? What does the right to a healthy environment in practice look like? We have Mr. Gerd Trogerman moderating, but of course we welcome Lucia Balagova, Deputy Head of the Economic and Trade Section of the EU delegation. We have Kun Kate, Deputy Secretary General of UN Global Compact Network Thailand, Umavanti, or Uma for short, speaking on behalf of the chair of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, ICHA, with Malaysia as chair, and Muna Nurin Atira Binti, or Atira for short, part of a member of UNICEF's Young People's Action Network. Over to you, Gerd.
Thank you very much, Belinda. Actually, the previous speaker, I believe, very eloquently set the stage for this panel discussion. It's very much against the background of these principles, policies, and practices that in this panel we would like to pursue three objectives together. The first one really is to understand how global recognition of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is reshaping corporate responsibility and due diligence in Asia. The second objective is to explore jointly how meaningful collaboration with communities, with workers, youth, and environmental defenders enhances corporate risk management and trust building. And the third objective of this panel would be to explore Asia's emerging regulatory, environmental, and social challenges and how businesses can adapt to evolving expectations while ensuring long-term resilience. Thank you, Belinda, for already introducing my distinguished panel to my left and to my right. In normal practice, I would always say ladies first, but now I have, as a moderator, a much easier choice to go from left to right in this panel. It's very good to have you all participating. I would have 2 questions for each of you, with about 6 to 8 minutes response time, if you agree, so that we can bring this as coherent, as concise together as possible, and also have a moment for concluding discussion and exchanges. And I would start with the liberty, and I'll have maybe directly to my left with Lucia Balogova, Deputy Head of the Economic and Trade Section of the EU delegation to Thailand, with a first question. And that is very much about how the European Union is integrating the principles of the right to clean, healthy and sustainable environment into its trade policies in ASEAN countries, and particularly in Thailand. Over to you, Lucia, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, dear ladies and gentlemen. Very happy to be here and share with you on what the EU is doing to integrate the right to healthy environment in its different policies, and in particular in the trade policy. So we have already heard it today. The EU indeed is a global leader in environmental and climate policies and in green transition. However, I see a lot of young faces. We have youth representatives here, so maybe just a word of context. The EU has been established as a peace and economic community, so basically in a post-war Europe, to deal with existential crises. But it's a dynamic community, dynamic concept. And we have also realized that climate change indeed represents another existential threat. So this has led to the evolution of different tools and policies and measures, and gradual incorporation and mainstreaming of right to environment and climate in the different policies. Just to give a few examples, emission trading system, for example, Europe has the first one established in 2005, which now serves as a model for other countries. Here we are here in Thailand, we're in Bangkok. Thailand is now in the process of drafting its own climate change bill, which also should have its own version of emission trading system. And the EU and Thailand also cooperate in this area. Another big example is the European Green Deal. It's the EU's green growth strategy. So it's a positive agenda for change. We know climate and environmental degradation poses challenges. It is not easy to deal with this, but it also presents opportunities. And that's where also trade and trade policies come into play. So I would maybe talk about 2 big groups of how the EU trade influences environmental and climate rights. So one big group is measures which are not purely trade, but they have an impact on trade. These are measures belonging to the different policies which intersect with trade. EU as the largest single market in the world. It has 440 million consumers, so it has certain power, certain pulling power that has a capability to shape rules also in other parts of the world, and also to shape business environment. So examples of these measures are, for example, carbon border adjustment mechanism. It's a climate measure whose goal is to decarbonize, but in effect, it's also spreading carbon pricing and sustainable production across the world. The revenue used from this mechanism could be used also to further climate and environmental objectives. It will support competitiveness and give competitive advantage and attract more investment in the countries that will align their production methods. Another one that has been mentioned already by several speakers is indeed corporate sustainability due diligence. We know that the EU is not the first one dealing with this. There are many international standards, UN, OECD, ILO. Nevertheless, these are not mandatory, so there is a certain proliferation of standards. But the main advantage or the main added value that the EU will bring is that this regulation now will be mandatory and will put a level playing field. So we actually had calls from the business themselves to have something like this adopted because it brings clarity for them. And I think you, Gerd, mentioned already many benefits that businesses will derive from it, including reputation, competitive advantage, attraction of investment, etc. Another one is EU deforestation regulation, also something new. The intention is to protect forests, but it also supports sustainable development in producing countries, and it is related to trade because it is about products being placed on the EU market. And these are the latest 3 examples where we can see how trade can be leveraged to achieve environmental objectives. In terms of pure trade policies, the most important tool that we have is the free trade agreements. We are currently negotiating one with Thailand. We are also negotiating in the region with Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. We already have agreements with Singapore and with Vietnam. So basically, the main premise of the agreement is not to harm the environment, and where possible to enhance it through the obligations of the trade agreement. So trade is a powerful tool for growth, but also for preserving the environment if it is used in the right way. So we have, in 2022, we have had a fresh look at our trade and sustainable development chapter. This is a standard chapter that is in all new generation EU trade agreements. We are also negotiating it with Thailand. If you want, you can have a look at it at the European Commission website, DG Trade. We are very transparent, so we publish our negotiating proposals, so you can have a look, you can read what is in the chapter. There are different areas covered. It's based on international standards. So we refer to international agreements in the area of environment and climate change, biological diversity, forests, fisheries, also labor and human rights, and responsible business conduct. A novelty is also that Paris Agreement becomes an essential element in our agreements, which means that if there are very serious breaches of Paris Agreement, you can even suspend the agreement. Another big important novelty is the stronger enforcement. So beginning with the agreement with New Zealand that has been concluded in 2023, we have also violations of trade and sustainable development can be subject to trade sanctions, which is, I think, the only agreement so far in the world that has this, and it's regardless of the impact on trade. So you don't need to show that there was damage to trade, but you still can impose trade sanctions in 2 cases, and that is breach of ILO core labor principles, or material breaches of the Paris Agreement. Beyond trade and sustainable development chapter, we are also mainstreaming sustainability to the whole agreement. For example, we are prioritizing liberalization of green goods and services. We are supporting green procurement. We are removing non-tariff barriers to this type of goods. And we have also strong engagement with different actors. I think you might ask me about it a little later, so I will maybe leave it here. Another tool, just to mention, because it's also relevant for this agreement, is generalized scheme of preferences, so-called GSP+, where we incentivize developing countries by asking them to implement 27 international conventions on labor, human rights, environment, and good governance, and this enables them to have better access to the EU market unilaterally. I think I will have to stop here. I think I could go on for very long, but in the interest of time and more questions, this is a brief overview.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Indeed, it's a very rich background against which you are bringing the tools and policies of the EU to the table here. And in today's world, any reference to a free trade agreement is actually also going down well, I think, at least in my own perception, when you compare these 2 headlines that we are looking at in the world these days. Let me have a very quick follow-up question, if I may, and that is against the kind of evolving regulatory landscape that we have worldwide. How can the EU and then also EU-based companies really ensure compliance to the type of standards and policies and uphold them? generally speaking, but also here in Asia?
So compliance is usually built into the different instruments themselves, and that's one part. And the other part is, of course, the pure power of the market that I have explained before. I think, first of all, there are certain conditions to be able to access the market, and then there is also a big competition. So if you want to be competitive, the world is changing with CBAM, with corporate sustainability reporting and due diligence. I think there is basically no other way than to engage and then to be one of the first movers, let's say. We have a very good experience in Thailand with that, for example, with deforestation regulation of CBAM, as opposed to other countries, also some of them from this region, which are very resistant and more on the offensive and defensive note. With Thailand, we have very good engagement. I think Andreas mentioned several projects. We have more also on sustainable fishing, on the forests, etc. So, yeah.
Super, thank you very much, Lucia. Let me from my left move to the far right and ask Dr. Kwan Rutai, in short, Kun Kate, if I may, a first question. You're the Deputy Secretary General of the UN Global Compact Network for Thailand. Can you tell us a little bit about the best practices you see in environmental and human rights due diligence from Thai businesses and how they can potentially be scaled at the regional level?
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation to the UNGCNT. For those who have not heard about the UNGCNT, we are the business coalition of 130 companies in Thailand. So what we are working is to ensure our 10 principles of the United Nations Global Compact being implemented in Thailand. Those 10 principles can be, classified into 4 principles. One is human rights. 2 is labor rights. 3 is about environment, and 4 is anti-corruption. As you can see that these 4 big categories cover all, action of the business who are the member to the United Nations Global Compact in Thailand. So what we are doing in action, like in a day-to-day, and also, to make sure the issues of due diligence on human rights and environmental issues being embedded in companies. We can see, first we do the research, and to see whether really from the top, the CEO, how they respond to this, and we can see the increasing number of the CEO in Thailand. To see the sustainability is important, and it's not a nice to have, but a must to have. So then that can ensure us a bit that, this kind of a sustainability approach is, very welcome in the company in Thailand. So we have a variety of, good example, but I think we can go for 2 for now. Doesn't mean that only 2 are good, but then everyone is working hard to ensure good practice. So one is the Thai Union Group. I think you have heard about this company, and perhaps colleagues from Thai Unions already, yes, I'm not sure. But then we need to see that the Thai Union is the one that had hard hit actually in around 2014, because they are doing the business about, the fishing and seafood processing. So during the time, I think sustainability in Thailand was not, accepted. In the sense that they don't understand what is it, and me too. During the time 2014, we focus on labor rights, human rights, but we don't see this as sustainability. And then Thai Union has, after that, has turned all the challenges to the opportunities. They have, I think, shifted all the business operations into the new thing for them. A lot of learning phase they have done, and then I think they have been through this since 2014, and now they become a kind of the global leader on the sustainable sourcings of all the fish and seafood. I think this one is one of the kind of leading by example that we can see and we are proud of. And I think this can be also replicated by other kind of peers in the seafood processing process. Another one is SCG. So this is a bit different of the sector. This sector is more on the issues of packagings and the issues that they are hard hit is on the environmental sustainability, environmental risk issue. They have set goal and targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and through this, I think the key issue and actions that we really need to campaign and advocate for is how to make sure the business has report all of their action into disclosure platform, more transparent, whatever form it is. So I think these two companies we've been monitored through, the disclosure they have, and they are part of the listed company as well. So you can see and monitor their actions. I think this is a kind of the best practice. If you ask me about how to scale this to make more impact, I think I will focus on the kind of national rather than regional first. I think the challenge we have now, although many companies, large companies have already done their own part of the sustainability, I think what is a kind of bottleneck to this is how to make this initiative to their supply chain. So this is very challenging time for Thailand, and we really need to call for the UNGC&T, we call for the inclusive business, which not only mean about other issues, but also issues of human rights and environmental due diligence need to be embedded in their other tier, I mean the supply chain, the tier 1 and other tier as well. So that I think to scale, we need to get kind of people in this room and then, to make partner and collaboration to ensure that the supply chain in Thailand has been strengthened on this kind of idea. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Khun Kate. If I may directly follow up on your last point, would you then say that it's primarily about advocacy and awareness raising and about bringing the critical mass of pressure behind these points?
Yeah, I think for us, as the UNGC&T, we have strategic approach of doing this kind of thing, and I think it can be replicated and can be used directly to supply chains as well. We got 5 pillars of transformation whenever we do the the implementation or initiative. One, everyone need to be on the same page of the transparency. That means everyone need to have their own report. Doesn't make you don't need to make only the reporting is not only the report, but it's the way to reflect yourself of how you do and whether you do significant harm to planet or people. So I think this one should be, as the kind of minimum requirements for everyone to do, including the SME, right? Second is market mechanism. We cannot only do in the business world. We really need the policy advocacy. I mean the legal framework or the policy in the country to be to set the standard, minimum requirement standard for this issue, for human rights, for the rights to clean environment. So we need that to kind of as a leverage and driving force to make this fast forward. And 3, I think the leading by example is important. I think the leadership, we need more leadership in this area. So I think we have enough for the large corporation, but then we need SME to take the lead in this as well. So we need to find an example so SME would know and then do understand that they can do as well. I get back to the market mechanism a bit more. Not just only the law on the enforcement, but I think what SME needs is on the incentives. Whether it is the tax incentive or the loan or any other like non-monetary incentive, they need this kind of thing. So I think the government of Thailand need to, review all this and to work as a kind of more integrated approach rather than fragmented, I think. And then the empowerment issue is very important. We need to work with those who are vulnerable in the supply chain, not just only the entrepreneurs, but also the workers in the supply chains as well. We have around 3 million migrant workers in who work in labor-intensive sector, including the agro-food. Like this, they are at risk of this kind of climate change and issues of environmental damages. So that we need to work to ensure that they are protected at ground as well. The last one, I still have no answer on this, but then I think the technology would help us, at least from the analytic point of view, but also we need some solutions to help, to kind of expedite the process of making this duty to respect to the right to environment to happen faster. So this kind of thing, I think we need this kind of strategy to be adopted and to be seen and to be agreed upon all stakeholders. And then we need to work not just only business, but also other stakeholders as well.
Thank you very much, Kun Kate, for giving us very concrete examples and for elaborating a bit more on incentives, on leadership, on empowerment, and on technology as the last point, which I think are resonating well across the borders of Thailand. And that's where I would like to go across the borders of Thailand, but still including Thailand and looking at ASEAN as a region, inviting to my very right my colleague Umavanti Vatanagantan, who is with us on behalf of the chair of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. Thank you very much for joining us as well. And the question that I would have for you to start off with is how does the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights address the intersection of human rights and environmental issues?
Thank you very much, Gert, and thank you for inviting me here. The chair of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights expresses his regret that he couldn't be here, but I think he was being very strategic. Looking at the conversation today is so much about environment and corporate responsibility. I am actually part indigenous in Malaysia, and I'm also part of a minority group. I'm born to a family with a very strong dynamics at home, so you can imagine the different ideologies and the things that I have to grow up with different settings, right? Different upbringing. I'm also a woman. I'm young. I'm a youth, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of the chair. I think I just wanted to set the context on the linkage between environment and human rights in ASEAN. So I think a lot of these conversations that we've heard about environment has been quite technical. We hear languages that are used by corporates, ESG, we've heard about carbon, financing and whatnot. So through the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, we bring in that link of human rights with environment through the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, specifically Article 28F, which you'll be surprised, this declaration was in 2012, and there's already an article that says the right to a safe, clean, and sustainable environment. And after this declaration was adopted by the leaders, a lot of the ASEAN member states have conducted initiatives and have efforts on implementing this particular article by bringing in the conversation of human rights and climate change and also environmental impact assessment. And this was done in 2014, from 2014 onwards up until presently. So, as you know, the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration was adopted in 2012, and we have not had any declarations since then. And recently, at least 2 years or 3 years ago, there were initiatives to sort of implement this particular right of Article 28F and framing it within the Southeast Asian region through ASEAN. And it was led by the country Thailand, where a working group for the ASEAN environmental rights was established to implement this right. And I think I wanted to bring the context of this declaration. This has been a 2-year work in progress, and I can go through a whole history of this, but I'm not allowed to have a PowerPoint, and I think this would be better suited if there was a PowerPoint to show you what were the progress made, what were the discussions that the working group has had before it was submitted to the ICHR. And I think this declaration, this proposed declaration, took 2 years because the declaration itself, the nature of the declaration, the proposed declaration by the working group was very, very much progressive. And I think a lot of us have an idea of what ASEAN is like. And there's different definitions, for example, on indigenous peoples in these different ASEAN member states. So some of these terms are contested in the proposed declaration. And when it was submitted to ICHR, a lot of deliberations were made. And I think what I wanted to highlight here is the content of the declaration itself. And this was reiterated. This was iterated by Excellency Rizwana, where she said, the right to freedom of information is one of the key elements in the declaration. There is the right to public participation. There is the access to remedies and justice. And one important thing that is highlighted in this proposed declaration is the right of indigenous peoples and also human rights defenders. And I think in Malaysia itself, we recognize indigenous peoples. We have the Orang Asli, we have the Orang Asal, and in the law itself, we recognize the natives of Sabah and Sarawak, where it is it's a mixture of all the different indigenous groups in East Malaysia. And these are the key elements and non-negotiables in the draft declaration that we have. And importantly, as the deliberations are being made through the ICHR, we try to ensure that these key elements are maintained. There's a lot of negotiation still happening, and the draft declaration that was actually drafted by the working group, ASEAN Environmental Rights Working Group, was submitted to the ICHR last year. And up until today, we're still, not we, but the representatives are still discussing on the draft declaration. But the idea for this is to have it adopted by this year. And we'll have to say that the draft declaration has been watered down, but as I mentioned, the key elements have been maintained and still up for negotiations. And what comes after this would be the regional plan of action, where a lot of these actions to meet, say, for example, risk assessments will be included as part of the plan of action, but that is a conversation once the draft declaration is adopted.
Super, thank you very much, Ms. Uma. You described yourself in the very beginning as representing the youth as well. Can you say a few more words about how you see the role of youth and civil society in terms of ensuring accountability and transparency under this proposed declaration?
Yeah, so I think everyone's role is quite important in pushing this declaration. And I have to say that the role of civil society and youths are very much prominent and needed because they bring in lived experiences from the ground. So that is something that I would have to say decision makers might not see because we are not down there to witness what are some of the works that are currently happening or what are the issues that are experienced by people. So the role of civil society and youth, and I know at least in Malaysia, a lot of the youths are very much involved on the ground. They've met with the indigenous people, and we've actually had a consultation with the youth, at least Aicha Malaysia has had consultation with the youth just recently, and also with civil society. And it was very refreshing to see young faces who had the courage to speak up and bring all these voices to the table. Because I think oftentimes when we go into negotiations or we sit in a high-level discussion, we often miss that element of that particular phase or element in the discussion. So I think it's quite important that the role of youth is to bring in this lived experience and also raise awareness, bringing all these conversations that we've had to the ground as well, and having that exchange and being the bridge between decision makers and also people on the ground.
Thank you very much, Ms. Uma. You make the link for me to move to our colleague to the very left, Ms. Atira Aslan, very easy. Ms. Atira, you are a member of the UNICEF East Asia and Pacific Regional Office Young People Action team, and you're a co-founder and chairperson of SE Amply Sustainable. Maybe you can briefly explain what SE Amply exactly is, which wasn't clear to me, but as you do, could you explain a little bit how you believe that youth can effectively influence corporate accountability and sustainability initiatives, particularly in the context of the right to clean and healthy and sustainable environment, going beyond the declaration that we just discussed and using this as a starting point?
Yep.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. So just to clarify, I co-founded and chair a youth-led organization called Simply Sustainable. What we basically do, we focus on sustainability awareness, education, and participation, not only in Malaysia, where I'm currently based, but also just across the region specifically. So just linking back to the question, the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, it's not a privilege. And as Her Excellency highlighted just now, it is a human right. And across from that, it's not just our right. And yet, for many across Asia, this right exists only on paper. While corporations pledge to sustainability, rivers are poisoned. While ESG reports grow longer, forests grow smaller. And while profits soar for shareholders, frontline communities who depend on these ecosystems for their survival bear the brunt of inaction to the climate crisis. This is no longer a regulatory issue. It is a question of justice. And in 1993, the Bangkok Declaration affirmed that human rights must be upheld with universality and objectivity without double standards. But let me ask, when corporations extract, pollute, and displace in the name of economic growth, whose rights are truly being protected? Because when industries degrade the land, it is the indigenous farmer who loses their home. When waters are contaminated, it is a factory worker's child who falls sick. When extreme weather wipes out livelihoods, it is not those sitting in boardrooms who feel the loss. It is the most vulnerable. So the reality is this: we, the young women and girls, Indigenous young people, young migrants, and young people with disabilities are often spoken about, but rarely spoken with. But let me be clear, we are not a passive generation waiting for change. We are agents of change, not by profession, but by necessity. Because when you have been embedded in a system for too long, you become it. You conform to its logic, its blind spots, its pursuit of profit at the expense of people and the planet. But we, the young people, refuse to accept that the cost of prosperity is environmental collapse and social prejudice. Human rights due diligence should be at the heart of every corporate approach, extending beyond voluntary commitments to embrace mandatory frameworks, such as the mandatory human rights and environmental due diligence. This means not only safeguarding the rights of workers, but also conducting child rights impact assessments, recognizing that the well-being of children is inseparable from that of their families and communities. Investors, too, must prioritize companies that demonstrate a commitment to these principles. And so we must rewrite the narrative. For too long, we have viewed nature as a commodity, something to be extracted, owned, and traded. We speak of our planet as if we have dominion over it, as if it exists solely for our benefit. But here is the truth that history has proven time and time again. When the Earth can no longer sustain us, it is not the planet that will suffer. It is us, because the Earth will heal, ecosystems will regenerate. But will we still be here to witness it? If you want long-term stability, then engage meaningfully with those who are most affected. Not as an afterthought, not as a checkbox, but as equal partners in shaping the future. Because your operations, your supply chains, your risk management strategies, none of them exist in a vacuum. They exist in the real world where real lives, are at stake. We are not just victims, but also the solution. Accountability is not a threat. It is an opportunity to do better, to be better, to build a world where doing business does not come at the cost of human survival. But yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Atira. And you taught me a lesson in terms of the title, the name of your movement on Simply Sustainable, which is brilliant. I just read it, slightly different in the very beginning, not knowing it as yet, but I'm looking forward to getting to know it in more detail. But based on the passionate plaidoyer you made, and one follow-up question. We speak a lot about green and just transitions, and we do so sometimes without being really clear what exactly we mean. You emphasized the word justice in the very beginning of when you spoke. What do green and just transitions mean to you in this context?
So, a just transition is more than a shift in energy sources. It is a moral imperative that challenges the status quo of business as usual for relentless growth and systematic exploitation. It is also the indispensable pursuit of social justice and human dignity. So, for too long, our economies have prioritized profit over people, extracting not only resources from the earth, but also the potential from its people. The cost of progress has too often been paid by the most vulnerable, such as workers displaced without support, communities left in energy poverty, and entire regions locked out of the benefits of sustainable development. A just transition is found in its dual mandate, which is to secure decent green jobs while ensuring energy equity. So first, we have to prepare a workforce for the future. And what this means is reskilling workers, ensuring job security, and making sure young people, women, and marginalized communities are not simply casualties of change, but active participants in shaping it. And if we don't act now, an entire generation of young people will find themselves locked out of the workforce. Women and girls who are already underrepresented in male-dominated industries like energy and construction, they risk being further excluded if we do not make their inclusion a priority. And a study in Malaysia recently found that more women are graduating with degrees in STEM, but are being hired at lower rates than men. And so a fair transition demands inclusive policies that offer social protection, fair wages, and equitable opportunities. And on the other hand, energy equity cannot remain a privilege of the wealthy. In many parts of Asia, the stark realities of energy poverty, where entire communities live without reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy, present a challenge to our collective aspirations. So we must also confront the modern echoes of economic colonialism. And what was once a war for oil is now a scramble for rare earth minerals in countries like Congo and Indonesia. And this is for renewable technologies that basically leave local communities impoverished and exploited. And this is a destructive double standard where while wealthier nations reap the benefits of these resources, they often evade their responsibility to the communities that supply them. And so resource-rich communities must no longer be treated as mere suppliers, but as rightful partners. And so we have three choices before us. We have one, reskill and hire young people or face a workforce crisis. And if we fail to prepare the next generation, millions will be locked out of jobs and progress will halt. Two, expand energy access or deepen inequality. If clean energy remains out of reach for those who need it most, the gap between the rich and the poor will only widen. And three, reform supply chains or lose both consumer trust and investor confidence. If industries continue extractive and exploitative practices, consumers and investors will demand better, and companies that fail to act will be left behind. And so I'll just close with this. The idea of a just transition is second nature to everyone in this room, I believe. But back home, for many, it's an unfamiliar concept. That's why education is key. We cannot expect communities to champion a transition they don't understand or see themselves in. And back in Malaysia, Tenaga Nasional Berhad, Malaysia Energy Literacy Program, is a great concept of bringing energy literacy directly to the people who need it most. And likewise, my organization, Simply, we ran a seminar last year at the Universitas Indonesia with government officials, grassroots advocates, and educators that show that these spaces don't just inform, they empower. They turn awareness into action, ensuring that a just transition is not just a policy term, but a reality that communities can take ownership of.
Thank you, Atira. Well said. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we intended to have this opening plenary to look at the rights to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment from very different perspectives. And I think we have succeeded to do so in looking at it in very different ways, starting with the EU's perspective as a global leader in human rights and environmental standards, its tools and practices and experiences. We looked with Kun Kate more deeply at the work of the Global Compact here in Thailand and what it means for Thai businesses, how to potentially scale, highlighting also the point of awareness and education, if I can summarize it as that at the business level, but you expanded it, Atira, also much more broadly at the societal level as well. With Uma, we looked then broader at the ASEAN community and the proposed declaration that you described very, very eloquently as another step forward, if you wish, to enshrine rights and standards and a clear way forward for the ASEAN community. Lucia, you said in the very beginning we could take hours to really go into detail, and I wish we could just make this an open forum and keep going for the next 2 hours without the alarm clock that I had to put next to me. I was actually supposed to conclude this panel by 10:40. Now it's 10:39. But it's not perfect landing. What I really want to do is give a few minutes to each of the panelists for a kind of a closing remark. We didn't really have a chance to discuss, but I'd like to give each of you the opportunity to say a few concluding words based on everything that you've heard, but also perhaps any points that you missed making at an earlier stage. Let me do so in the same order as before. Lucia, over to you perhaps to start closing us.
Yes, thank you very much, and indeed very interesting thoughts that we heard here. So I would like to conclude perhaps by mentioning 3 points. One is that it's very clear that environment and climate are extremely important for us since we are humans and we need to live on this planet. So there is a varied mix of policies and tools and measures that we all can use. Trade is definitely a very important one, but it cannot do it alone. What Atirat said about the resource-rich countries and how they sometimes are not treated fairly. So, for example, just a week ago, we have announced a new tool in the European Union toolbox. It is something called Clean Trade and Investment Partnership. The first one has been announced. It will be negotiated with South Africa. And basically the purpose is to develop value addition in the country of origin, to bring jobs to the country of origin, to help with capacity building and accompanying measures. So I think this is a new tool that is quite attractive, and it's now also in the EU toolbox. So we are listening and we are developing new measures. Second point I would like to say is stakeholder engagement is extremely important. We have it before, during, and after our free trade negotiations, but also outside. Like Kun Kate mentioned, Thai Union had great difficulties. I think it was after the EU issued a yellow card for IUU fishing, for fishing irregularities, but it was indeed turned in a very good success story. Now the EU is saying that with Thailand we have developed cooperation and we have brought the sustainability on the radar. We engage every year annually with Thailand in something that is called IUU Working Group, and it's a very good engagement, I must say. We are also closely watching now the amendment of the Royal Fisheries Ordinance in the sense of stakeholder engagement, very important. Everybody has a role to play, be it business, trade unions, NGOs, environmental organizations, youth, media. And my last point is something that I have not talked about a lot, but of course, if we are setting rules and regulations and demanding businesses and other stakeholders to do certain things, we need to raise awareness, we need to explain what we are doing and why we are doing it, and we need to accompany it with sufficient financial and technical support. And this is what my colleagues in Cooperation and Foreign Policy Instruments section are also doing with different projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucia. You directly addressed Kun Kate, and Kun Kate, you spoke second. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I think my call to action is one thing that I already mentioned. I think for the moment and moving forward, I think the inclusive business is the key to make this happen. And then in that, we have some key action that we want to work under the UNGCNT. We want to work on the supply chain management, meaning that the action that I have just spoken, we really need to make it, in actions. And with that key pillar of transformation, I think the supply chain can be, to make it more sustainable in a sense. So we need to have the alliance like the SME in that supply chain, and then the other as well, vulnerable groups, including the youth, of course. The UNGCNT never leave the youth behind. We have that in our commitment as well, that we need to work with youth to make sure like they have, we want to move the future as a sustainable, intelligent society, which we are not only relying on the AI, but then how to use the technology to be more sustainable. And in youth mind, they need to have the sustainable development issue in their own mindset as well. So that kind of the youth is also in our collaboration. Then I think the limitation that we have at the UNGCNT, we only have 138 business members. Why? Actually, there are 900 something listed companies there. So I think this is the way that we want to move forward to work with the SET, the SET, to ensure we need to have members to make more impact and to scale. And the third, I think when people always talk about the RBC, responsible, sustainable business conduct, then we really need to make sure whenever the SME already invest in their sustainable journey, we don't want to see the race to the bottom, meaning that whenever this investment has happened, if the product is increased in the price, the pricing model should not be the only way to make a decision, go or no go. So I don't want to see this kind of practice in the business world. And without this kind of condition, I think we cannot go, beyond this kind of limit. So let's work together, moving forward faster of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Kate. Uma, you spoke very eloquently to the proposed declaration in ASEAN. What would be your concluding thoughts for this panel?
I think this is something that I was just thinking, as Kun Kate mentioned earlier when she was speaking. She used the word empowerment, and that's, I think, a very important key point here. And something that I would like to put out there is that despite the hat that I'm wearing, I think we cannot work without our rights holders and without our stakeholders. And I think that's a very, very important thought that we need to have in our minds when we do policies, because at the end of the day, the policies are not just for us, but also for the future generations. And I think a lot of us would need to empower our stakeholders and rights holders so that they are empowered to take action. And I think for me, that is my key message here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Atire, you have the final word, if I may turn to you.
Thank you very much. I think I'll just start with a simple question. Do you currently enjoy the world you live in today? Because look around, we are witnessing the unchecked rise of oligarchs, rampant ethno-religious strife, and self-proclaimed peacemaking corruptors. And famously, Elon Musk recently stated, "The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy." And I reject that notion with every fiber of my being. Empathy isn't a weakness. It's our most potent tool for uniting fractured communities and sparking real change. In Sarah Ahmad's Cultural Politics of Emotion, she reminds us the spatial politics of emotion are what bind people to community, influence social identity, and shape social action. This isn't corporate doublespeak or an empty rhetoric. It's a call to confront the raw truth of our interconnected humanity. Today, I speak not to the titles on your name cards, but to you as fellow human beings. We must shatter the cynical narrative that dismisses empathy as a flaw. Instead, harness it to tear down barriers, challenge the status quo, and build a future where genuine care fuels every decision. It's time to stop pretending indifference is strength and start leading with the heart. Thank you.
Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I take this as an applause for the whole panel, in addition to a specific applause to what Atira just said. This was an attempt to really stimulate discussions going forward for the next 2 days. I hope a lot of the points that were made by my 4 colleagues, Atira, Lucia, Uma, and Kun Kate, would resonate with you. I thank the panel very much for the time and for your insights, for sharing this with us. And I conclude the panel about 10 minutes over time. Thank you so much for your attention.